Before anything else, you need to slow your breathing and settle your attention here. This is not a motivational message, and it is not a generic encouragement meant for everyone. What you are hearing now is a revelation of structure, the architecture behind why your life has unfolded the way it has, why certain doors never opened no matter how hard you pushed, and why other doors opened without explanation. Long before you were aware of purpose, before language, before intention, God designed a blueprint for your calling. Not a rough idea, not a flexible plan, a precise living design that accounted for your temperament, your resilience, your sensitivity, your timing, and even your breaking points. Nothing in your life has been accidental, not the delays, not the resistance, not the isolation, especially not the moments where you felt forgotten. Those were not absences of God, they were silent preparations. The chosen blueprint does not begin with visibility, it begins with containment. God never releases weight into a vessel that cannot yet carry it. That is why your life may have felt unusually restrictive at times, as if something unseen was holding you back, even when opportunities appeared within reach. That restraint was not punishment, it was calibration. You were being trained internally before being trusted externally. Many people chase calling through action, but the chosen are shaped through pressure. Pressure reveals structure. Pressure exposes weaknesses. Pressure forges integrity. Every season where you felt misunderstood, underestimated, or delayed was not wasted time, it was reinforcement. God was strengthening load-bearing pillars inside you that would one day support influence, responsibility, and impact without collapse. You may have noticed that your trials were oddly specific, not random hardships, but situations that targeted your identity, your confidence, your trust, your voice. This is because the blueprint for a chosen calling always includes opposition that mirrors destiny. The enemy never attacks potential he cannot perceive. The reason certain patterns kept repeating was not because you failed to learn the lesson. It was because each cycle was testing a deeper layer of readiness. God does not remove the test when you complain. He removes it when the internal response changes. That is why what once broke you eventually stopped affecting you. That emotional numbness you mistook for exhaustion was actually mastery forming. You were becoming unreactive to what once controlled you. That is not loss of feeling, that is authority taking shape. Hidden activations occur quietly. There was no announcement when discernment sharpened inside you, no ceremony when your intuition deepened, no applause when your tolerance for falsehood disappeared. These were internal switches being flipped in silence. Chosen ones are rarely told when they level up. They notice it by what no longer works. Conversations feel hollow. Certain environments feel heavy. Old ambitions lose their grip. This is not confusion, it is alignment. The blueprint is narrowing your path, stripping away options that would dilute your assignment. God does not give chosen ones many choices. He gives them clarity, and clarity can feel uncomfortable because it removes distractions that once felt like freedom. There is also a reason your preparation has been largely solitary. Blueprint work is private by necessity. If too many voices enter the design phase, the structure weakens. That is why God removed people who would have loved the outcome of your calling but interfered with the process. Some separations were not betrayals, they were safeguards. You were being preserved from premature exposure, from opinions that would have bent your resolve before it hardened. This is why your calling never fit neatly into group expectations. You were not designed to replicate what already exists. You were designed to carry something specific that required insulation until maturity. Pay close attention to this. The blueprint includes timing as a non-negotiable element. You were not late, you were not early, you are not behind. You are exactly where the internal construction phase requires you to be. God measures readiness differently than humans do. Humans look at age, credentials, visibility. God looks at endurance, obedience under obscurity, and emotional regulation under pressure. That is why some people rise quickly and collapse just as fast, while others seem invisible until suddenly they are unmovable. The chosen blueprint favors sustainability over speed. If you are still here listening, it is because something in you recognizes this truth at a cellular level. You have always sensed that your life was being engineered, not improvised. That sense of "there must be more" was not ambition, it was memory. Your spirit remembers the design even when your mind doubts it. And now, the reason this revelation is coming into focus is simple. The foundation phase is nearing completion. What God builds in silence, He reveals with precision. Do not rush this moment. Do not skim past it. What you understand here determines how well you carry what comes next. Now that you understand there is a blueprint, you must understand how it operates. God does not design callings the way humans design careers. Careers are chosen, callings are activated. A career can be abandoned without consequence. A calling cannot be escaped without internal conflict. That inner restlessness you've carried for years, the feeling that no external achievement ever fully satisfied you, was not ingratitude. It was misalignment. You were never meant to be fulfilled by surface-level success. Your blueprint was written for depth, impact, and consequence, not comfort. The blueprint unfolds in layers, and most people only recognize the final layer. They see influence, authority, clarity, confidence, but they do not see the years of internal dismantling that made those things stable. Before God reveals purpose outwardly, He removes dependency inwardly. That is why seasons of disappointment preceded seasons of understanding. You had to lose reliance on validation, approval, and external reassurance so that when your calling activates, it would not be hijacked by ego, fear, or people-pleasing. God will never allow a chosen one's purpose to be powered by insecurity. You were intentionally placed in environments that did not fully appreciate you. This was not cruelty. It was contrast. You had to learn the difference between being needed and being called. Many people are celebrated because they are useful. Chosen ones are often overlooked because they are disruptive. Your presence challenged systems, exposed inconsistencies, and unsettled complacency, even when you said very little. That discomfort you caused was not because you were wrong. It was because your blueprint carried truth others were not ready to face. God will never place a blueprint carrier permanently among those who cannot tolerate authenticity. There is also a reason your intuition matured faster than your circumstances. You could sense where things were going long before they arrived. You knew when something would fail before it collapsed. You felt shifts in relationships before words were spoken. This is not anxiety, this is foresight. Blueprint carriers are designed with advanced internal sensors because their calling requires anticipation, not reaction. God trains you to read environments, people, and timing so that when responsibility increases, you are already fluent in discernment. Your trials were never meant to destroy you. They were meant to decode you. Each hardship stripped away assumptions about who you thought you were, revealing who you actually are. You learned what you could survive. You learned what you would no longer tolerate. You learned which parts of you were negotiable and which were non-negotiable. That is blueprint clarity. God does not assign missions to people who do not know themselves. Self-knowledge is not pride, it is preparedness. Notice how certain temptations never fully appealed to you, even when they were available. Certain paths looked attractive but felt wrong. Certain shortcuts repelled you instead of enticing you. That internal resistance was not moral superiority, it was design protection. Your blueprint contains constraints for your own preservation. What others can do casually would damage you deeply. That is why God blocked things that seemed harmless at the time. He was protecting the integrity of the assignment before you even understood it existed. Another critical element of the blueprint is silence. God spoke to you more through absence than through explanation. When answers didn't come, it forced you to develop patience, listening, and trust. When prayers felt unanswered, it trained you to stay aligned without reassurance. That discipline is rare and necessary. Your calling will require you to move before applause, act before confirmation, and stand firm when understanding lags behind obedience. God does not give that responsibility to those who need constant affirmation. If you are feeling a strange pressure lately, not fear but intensity, that is not random. Pressure indicates proximity. When construction nears completion, reinforcement increases. The blueprint is transitioning from internal to external. This phase often feels uncomfortable because old coping mechanisms stop working, distractions lose their appeal, escapes feel empty. You are being drawn inward because clarity is being finalized. God does not activate a calling in chaos. He activates it in stillness. Stay here mentally. Do not rush ahead. The next part will explain what happens when the blueprint begins to surface and why your life may already be showing signs that the preparation phase is ending. When the blueprint begins to surface, life does not become instantly easier. It becomes unmistakably clearer. Confusion fades first, not obstacles. You start recognizing patterns instead of reacting to problems. Situations that once drained you now expose themselves quickly. Conversations feel louder, silences feel heavier. You notice when something is off without needing proof. This is not emotional sensitivity. This is alignment. The blueprint activates awareness before authority. God sharpens perception before he expands influence, because misuse of clarity can be destructive if it arrives before humility is secured. One of the earliest signs that preparation is ending is disruption without explanation. Things that were stable begin to feel wrong. Roles you once tolerated feel suffocating. Relationships that survived years suddenly cannot survive weeks. This is not rebellion, it is recalibration. Your blueprint contains expiration dates for environments that no longer match your internal frequency. God does not remove you violently, he removes your comfort so you will move willingly. Resistance here creates unnecessary pain. Discernment creates smooth transition. You may also notice that people respond differently to you now. Some become drawn to you without knowing why. Others become defensive, irritated, or distant. This is not about your behavior. It is about resonance. When a blueprint activates, it exposes alignment and misalignment automatically. Light does not argue with darkness. It reveals it. You are no longer blending in because your purpose requires distinction. God never elevates those who still need to fit in. Another unmistakable sign is internal urgency paired with external patience. You feel like something important is close, but you are not panicked. You are alert, not anxious. This is divine timing awareness. Anxiety pushes. Alignment waits while preparing. Your spirit knows what your mind cannot yet articulate. That tension between knowing and waiting is intentional. It keeps you attentive without making you reckless. Pay attention to what no longer satisfies you. Entertainment feels hollow. Surface conversations feel exhausting. Old ambitions feel incomplete. This is not depression. This is discernment refinement. God is narrowing your appetite so your energy stops leaking into things that cannot carry your calling forward. Focus is not forced. It is cultivated by removing alternatives. When your blueprint nears activation, distractions lose power because purpose requires concentration. You may also experience a surge in memories, past failures, old dreams, childhood tendencies, forgotten skills. This is not nostalgia, this is inventory. God is reconnecting you with elements of yourself that were planted early but postponed by survival. Nothing from your past was wasted. Even detours provided tools. The blueprint integrates everything: pain, talent, loss, insight into a single function. That is why your life never made sense in pieces, but begins to make sense when viewed as a whole. There is a reason instructions feel subtle right now. God is training you to move without spectacle. Loud guidance creates dependency. Quiet guidance creates discernment. Your calling will require you to hear truth beneath noise, direction beneath confusion, and opportunity beneath chaos. This is why clarity arrives in whispers, not shouts. Those who require dramatic signs cannot steward quiet authority. Most importantly, understand this. The blueprint does not activate when you feel ready. It activates when you are stable. Confidence is not required. Consistency is. Certainty is not required. Obedience is. God does not wait for perfection. He waits for surrender. When resistance ends, movement begins. If you feel like something is closing while something else has not yet opened, remain still. That gap is not abandonment, it is alignment. The old door must fully close so the new one does not split your focus. God does not multitask destinies. He completes transitions. What comes next is not just activation, it is assignment. And once the assignment begins, retreat will no longer feel possible. The next half will reveal what changes when the blueprint moves from internal alignment to external execution, and why your next season will demand courage, not confidence. When the blueprint moves from internal alignment to external execution, life begins to respond to you differently. This is where many chosen ones misunderstand what activation looks like. They expect instant reward, recognition, or relief. Instead, what comes first is responsibility, authority before applause, weight before reward. God does not unveil purpose to impress you, He unveils it to position you, and position always comes with pressure. You may notice that opportunities appear suddenly, but they require courage you did not know you had to use yet. Doors open that force decisions instead of comfort. Silence from God decreases, but demand increases. This is not because He has become distant, it is because He is trusting you. When instruction becomes less frequent, it is not abandonment, it is confirmation that discernment has matured. This phase exposes procrastination quickly. What you delay now feels heavier than before. Hesitation carries consequences. That is intentional. Your blueprint is built for movement, not stagnation. God begins to accelerate cause and effect, so you learn precision. Small decisions matter more. Words carry more weight. Your energy becomes noticeable even when you are quiet. This is why self-discipline becomes critical now. Misalignment costs more at this level. You may also experience opposition without provocation. Not because you are attacking, but because presence alone disrupts systems built on compromise. This is where many retreat, not because they are weak, but because they did not expect resistance without conflict. Understand this clearly. Opposition is confirmation, not correction. The blueprint threatens stagnation simply by existing. You are not meant to argue with resistance. You are meant to outlast it. Another shift you will notice is solitude becoming necessary, not lonely. You will require time alone, not because people drain you, but because clarity demands space. Noise becomes intolerable. Crowds feel disorienting. This is not arrogance, it is calibration. When purpose sharpens, distractions hurt more. God isolates not to punish, but to protect focus. Fear may still appear, but it changes form. It no longer screams. It whispers doubt about timing, worth, or scale. This is the final test before momentum. Fear at this stage is subtle because it knows force no longer works. The answer is not bravery. It is obedience without negotiation. You do not need to feel ready. You need to move when instructed. Your blueprint also begins to affect others now. People will come to you with questions they did not ask before. Some will seek guidance, others will seek validation, some will try to anchor themselves to your clarity without doing their own work. Boundaries become non-negotiable. Access must be earned by alignment, not familiarity. This is where many chosen ones fail, not from immorality, but from overextension. You are not meant to carry everyone. Your calling has a direction, not a rescue mission. God assigns impact strategically. Overgiving dilutes authority. Protection of energy is stewardship, not selfishness. Pay attention to what drains you now. That is what you are meant to release. Pay attention to what energizes you even when it is difficult. That is where your assignment lives. Purpose is not always easy, but it is always energizing at the soul level. In this phase, prayer changes tone. You stop asking why and start asking how. You stop seeking reassurance and start seeking accuracy. God responds quickly when questions mature. The blueprint is no longer theoretical, it is operational, and once it is operational, neutrality is no longer possible. You are either aligned or resisting. There is no middle ground. The next part will reveal why this stage often feels heavier than the struggle that came before, and why that weight is proof that your life is finally carrying something real. There is a reason this phase feels heavier than anything you have survived before, even heavier than seasons of loss, confusion, or pain. What you are carrying now is not wounds, it is weight. And weight only comes from something solid being placed on you. Struggle drains, purpose presses. That pressure you feel is not the enemy closing in, it is responsibility settling on your shoulders. This is what it feels like when heaven entrusts you with something real. Earlier seasons were about breaking you open. This season is about building you up, and construction always feels slower, louder, and more demanding than demolition. When God dismantled your old identity, chaos followed. But now that He is constructing your calling, precision is required. Every misstep matters more. Every shortcut costs more. That is why the internal tension has increased, not because you are failing, but because you are finally operating at a level where accuracy matters. You may feel like you are constantly being observed, even when no one is around. That awareness is not paranoia, it is conscience being refined. The blueprint activates an internal witness, a heightened sense of alignment and misalignment. You feel when something is off now, you know when words are empty, you sense when timing is wrong. This is not anxiety, this is discernment sharpening. And with sharpened discernment comes grief. Grief for who you can no longer be, where you can no longer go, and what you can no longer tolerate. Old habits lose their comfort. Old conversations feel hollow. Old goals feel small. You are not becoming distant, you are becoming specific. Purpose narrows focus. It does not expand distractions. This is also when temptation changes form. It no longer comes as obvious sin or destruction. It comes as misalignment disguised as opportunity. Things that look good but pull you sideways instead of forward. Invitations that flatter your ego but dilute your assignment. Roles that reward you quickly but cost you long-term authority. This is why patience becomes a weapon. Speed is no longer proof of blessing. Alignment is. You may notice that some people react strangely to your growth. They are not angry at you. They are unsettled by what your clarity exposes in them. When someone chooses comfort, your obedience feels like judgment, even when you say nothing. Do not try to explain yourself. Explanations leak power. Your life will eventually speak louder than your defense ever could. At this stage, God often removes the desire to be understood. You will still value connection, but you will no longer chase validation. This is crucial because validation addiction weakens authority. The blueprint requires internal certainty, not external approval. Confidence must be rooted in obedience, not applause. Another marker of this phase is repetition. God will test the same area more than once, not because you failed, but because mastery requires consistency. Passing once proves awareness. Passing repeatedly proves integration. This is where character locks in. Who you are becoming is being stabilized. You may also experience moments of stillness that feel uncomfortable. Nothing breaking, nothing collapsing, nothing dramatic, just quiet. Resist the urge to create chaos for stimulation. Silence is not stagnation, it is consolidation. God allows stillness so purpose can anchor deeply enough to withstand pressure. Your blueprint also includes timing that frustrates your logic. You will see pieces aligning but not completing, momentum building but not releasing. This is intentional. Premature exposure damages fragile authority. God waits until strength and humility mature together. Power without humility corrupts. Humility without power limits impact. The blueprint balances both. If you feel stretched between who you were and who you are becoming, you are exactly where you should be. That tension is the threshold. Do not numb it. Do not escape it. Let it shape you. Thresholds are uncomfortable because they require surrender of the familiar before the new becomes solid. In the next and final part, you will understand what seals the blueprint permanently, the decision that moves you from preparation into embodiment, and why, once that decision is made, life will never return to what it was before. There comes a moment, and it is closer than you think, when the blueprint stops being something you understand and becomes something you inhabit. This is the crossing point. Not when you feel ready, not when everything is clear, but when obedience outweighs hesitation. Up until now, God has been shaping you quietly, correcting you internally, adjusting your perception, strengthening your discernment. But the final seal of the blueprint is activated only when you choose alignment, even without reassurance. This is where many hesitate, not because they lack faith, but because stepping fully into purpose means relinquishing the option to retreat. Preparation allows room for uncertainty. Embodiment does not. Once you embody the calling, your life becomes a reference point, watched, measured, felt by others even when you are silent. That is why the final step feels weighty. Authority always costs privacy. You may notice that your tolerance for indecision is disappearing. Procrastination no longer feels neutral. It feels painful. This is not pressure. It is clarity demanding movement. The blueprint is no longer forming. It is asking to be lived. And living it does not mean doing something dramatic. It means choosing consistency over comfort, truth over approval, alignment over acceleration. At this stage, God removes ambiguity from your inner world. You may not know every outcome, but you know the direction. And direction is more powerful than certainty. Certainty can create arrogance. Direction creates obedience. The blueprint does not require you to see the whole road, only to honor the next step without negotiating. You may also realize that fear has changed its voice. It no longer screams, it whispers logic, it presents reasonable delays. It suggests waiting for better timing, better conditions, more confidence. But timing is not something you wait for, it is something you enter, and entry requires decision. This is why God often asks for a quiet commitment before a visible one. A decision made in private carries more authority than one announced publicly. When you decide internally, the world eventually rearranges externally. Resistance does not disappear, but it loses leverage. You will also notice a shift in how obstacles behave. They no longer block, they reveal. Every resistance highlights what still needs trust. Every delay exposes where control still lives. The blueprint uses friction as feedback. Nothing is wasted now. Another sign the blueprint is sealing is peace, not emotional calm, but internal stillness, a grounded knowing. You stop asking, "Am I doing the right thing?" and start asking, "Am I being faithful to what I already know?" That shift marks maturity. People may misunderstand you more at this stage, not because you are unclear, but because you are no longer available for projection. You will stop explaining transitions, stop justifying boundaries, stop oversharing vision. Silence becomes strategic, not defensive. This is also when the desire to impress fades completely. You no longer need your purpose to be seen to feel valid. You need it to be true, and truth carries its own gravity. Those aligned will feel it. Those misaligned will drift without conflict. Understand this clearly. The blueprint does not end with achievement. It begins with stewardship. What God entrusts to you next will require maintenance, humility, restraint, and courage. This is not a finish line. It is a role. And once the blueprint is embodied, life will not return to what it was before. Not because things become harder, but because they become clearer. Confusion gives way to responsibility. Anxiety gives way to accountability. and longing gives way to purpose. You were never late, you were never broken, you were never wandering. You were being built, layer by layer, for something that cannot be rushed. And now the blueprint is no longer hidden. It is alive in you. Stay aligned, stay grounded, and walk forward, not as someone searching for purpose, but as someone finally carrying it.